You are listening to WXOJLP Northampton, 103.3 FM, your Valley Free radio station. Welcome. I'm Warren Odess Gillette, and this is A Baha'i Perspective. A Baha'i Perspective is a radio program that presents a unique spiritual perspective on contemporary issues. Today I'm playing a pre-recorded interview of Katherine Knaplund, a Baha'i who currently resides in Amherst, Massachusetts, and is an undergraduate student at the University of Massachusetts. She took a year off between high school and university to do a year of service in India. I started our interview by asking Katherine where she grew up and what was it like growing up there.
I was born in Seattle, Washington, and I moved to Wilbraham, Massachusetts, which is about half an hour south, when I was 3. So I grew up there, and it was really great because my aunt also lived in the same town. So it was a great support for my parents growing up. I came from a Protestant family, and my mother and father really loved music, and a part of that, we would go to church every Sunday, and my dad was part of the choir. My mom was also part of the choir, and I tried so hard to become part of the choir, and finally they let me in. 3 years, I was 3 years younger than I should have been to be let in, but I was let in, and I did the handbells, and I really loved going to church. Throughout my years there, I always looked forward to going to church. I would go to church with my dad very early in the morning when he would go for choir practice, and I would hang around, and it was really great, and I really liked it. But I can't really describe it so much because it wasn't like a conscious feeling that I had, but I did really feel, although I loved going to church, I did really feel that something was missing. And it was more of an unconscious feeling than something. Every time I went to church, I was thinking there must be something more.
Okay, and how old were you when you were starting to become conscious of this thing missing?
It probably was about when I was 8 or 9. I was one of the kids in the class that would always ask the annoying questions again and again. And
you were?
I was, yes. So when I would be in Sunday school, I would ask different questions about, I remember asking, will Jesus come back, and, when, and why isn't there something for now, and these types of questions, which always kind of flustered my Sunday school teachers. And then I remember my mom, when my mom and my dad were living in Seattle, where I was born, my mom came in contact with a Baha'i and went to an informal meeting in Seattle. And then when she moved to Wilbraham, she kind of fell out of touch. She didn't know how to contact Baha'is. And it wasn't until she saw a advertisement, I think in the newspaper, for Sunday school, that she realized that Baha'is were living in Wilbraham. And
well, let's backtrack a little bit. What was your mother's story as far as her getting in contact with the
Well, my mom went to college in New Hampshire, and while she was in college, she had a friend who told her to look out for Baha'is and don't talk to Baha'is because they're actually, trying to convert you, and they have all these ideas that are really, That was the first time she heard, but she didn't really have any direct contact with Baha'is until she moved to Seattle. And it was actually a friend of hers that she met on the bus. My mom, when she was in Seattle, there wasn't a lot of contacts that she had. She had just had my older brother, who was about 2 at the time. And so she found a person that lived right on our street who also had young children. So it was a really great connection for her. So she went to...
so this is after she got married?
Yes.
Okay. And so she didn't have family. She was sort of separated
All of the family, my dad's and my mom's family, lives on the East Coast. So they were pretty alone out there in Seattle. So she went to a couple of what are called firesides, which are... just informal meetings where people can come and ask questions about the Baha'i faith and learn about the Baha'i faith.
I've missed the connection then. She made contact with another family who had young children, is that what you said? And then they happened to be Baha'is? Is that
Yes.
Okay.
So that was how the connection happened.
Okay.
So she became friends with the mother first because they had the same age, the children were the same age. And then that's how she became very close with the family.
Okay.
And learned about the Baha'i faith.
Okay.
And
did she have any religious leanings before that?
Her family, again, was Protestant, and they used to go to church. My mom has always said that she's been a very spiritual person. But when my mom and dad were first married, there was never kind of a drive to go to church.
Okay. All right, so now we're back in Wilbraham. Your mother saw an ad in the newspaper.
Yes. My mom saw an ad in the newspaper for a Baha'i Sunday school. So she was really excited because she had learned about the Baha'i faith when she was living in Seattle, but she hadn't done all the research that she wanted to. She would have liked to had more contact. So she was really excited to hear that there were Baha'is, and she contacted a Baha'i who actually lived on our street. Same story, right in the same neighborhood. And she started going to informal gatherings and learn more about the Baha'i faith. And at this point, I was probably around 10 when she started going. I never really knew where she was going because she would say she would be going to a meeting or whatever, but I didn't ask questions. Okay, Mom, bye. So it wasn't until she came back on Valentine's Day, actually, she came back from a fireside, and she was very excited, and she was, glowing from ear to ear, and she said that she had decided to become a Baha'i. And that's when my brother and I were like, but what? What's Baha'i? This is the first time I've been hearing about it. And she told us about it, and we went to... what
was the general reaction of the family after the Baha'i what?
Yeah.
What was the general reaction?
Well, I'm sure she had been talking to my father a lot more about it than us, because we were kind of clueless. I mean, we didn't really know that this was coming or anything. But
so was that no surprise to your father?
Yeah, it was no surprise to my father. He knew, even in Seattle, that she was looking into this. Okay. And he was very supportive. He still is very supportive. He loves coming to Baha'i activities and really has a lot of respect for the Baha'i faith. So he was fine with it. My brother and I... We were also, my mom's old enough to know what she's doing. So I was just more curious as to what, my mother had been doing all these times and, why she joined this religion. I was I think I was 11 at that point. So I was kind of at the stage where I was wanting to know more about what my mom was doing, and not quite at the rebellion stage, but more of the being interested in growing up and knowing what parents are doing, that type of stage. So we started going to holy days. My mom would invite us to holy days. So that's how...
what is that?
We went to...
When you say holy day, what are you referring to?
We went to Nowruz, which is the... celebration of the Baha'i New Year, which happens at the spring equinox on March 21st. And it's very significant because not only is it the Baha'i New Year, but it's also the end of the Baha'i fast, which lasts for 19 days. Actually, I should backtrack a little bit.
All right.
The Baha'i calendar is 19 months, each consisting of 19 days. At the beginning of each month, we have what's called a feast. Okay. And so people come together and the community comes together, and this is a time for fellowship and for, meeting of friends, and also for discussing different community activities and these types of things at the beginning of every month. And the last month is the month of fasting. Okay. So during this last month, all 19 days are spent fasting, and so you get up before sunrise, eat food, fast for the whole day, and then at when the sun sets, you break your fast. And it's a very special and spiritual time because you can really spend that time in reflection, and every time you get hungry, you can remember, why you're fasting. And it's a very spiritual experience, and it's wonderful. So the holy day that we had gone to, the first holy day, was Nowruz, which, as I said, was the end of fasting, and it's such a joyous holy day because it is the beginning of the new year.
Okay. You're describing your first holy day that you went to?
Yes.
Okay.
So when we went there, I was, of course, pretty young, and my brother was 3 years older than me, so he must have been 14.
Mm-hmm.
And we met with some Baha'i children, and we also met the community. And it was so different from church, because church was a church. I don't know. And this was more of like a community. Much like if you went to a community center, it's not, there's not pews, there's not a pulpit, it's not anything like that. So it was a very warm and beautiful experience that I had when I went to that first holy day. And I really felt very welcomed and very at home. I really felt at home when I went. And I made a couple of really great friendships with some of the other kids, and there was a Baha'i workshop which I got involved in.
Why don't you explain what that means?
Yeah, well, what the workshop is different youth and children coming together and doing different artistic or dramatic presentations on different social or moral issues. For instance, we used to do a dance on the equality of women and men. We did a dance on race unity. We did a dance to, various topics. But it was really great because it was a venue where people could come and could express themselves or could dance or sing or, what have you. And it was all youth ages from, 10 to 18, 20. And my mom was actually one of the facilitators of the workshop. It was just a really nice extracurricular activity that I did when I was young. That was just really, it wasn't so much of, chess club or soccer, and it wasn't really Sunday school either, but it was a place where you could really express yourself. After I became involved in different activities, such as the workshop and going to different activities with my mom, I really started to become involved and really wanting to learn more about what the religion was actually about, because it seemed all nice and good, but I didn't really know much besides what my mom had told me, which was basically in a nutshell that when she told my brother and I what the Baha'i faith was, she said that there was basically three onenesses. The first one was the oneness of God, which means that there's only one God. This one God who loves humanity so much has sent different manifestations throughout time, because he's promised that he'll never leave us alone. So he sent different manifestations throughout time, such as Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and he has now sent a manifestation of God for this time period, whose name is Baha'u'llah. And my mom also said that there was also the oneness of humanity, which means that we are all brothers and sisters, and we all come from the same source, and we all should follow our one God. So that was what she had briefly, which was nice. I was young, so it was something that I could definitely get a hold of. And especially this idea of this progressive revelation that God sent throughout time was definitely a very warming feeling, because it just really made sense that, I did believe that that God loves us. That was what I grew up believing, that God loves us, and the fact that he would never leave us alone and he would always send messengers to guide us really made sense. Because the world is a really big place, even though it's become smaller and smaller nowadays. It's a really big place, especially thousands of years ago. And it just made sense that in different parts of the world, he would send different spiritual leaders to guide humanity, and that now there was another spiritual manifestation that would come. And the teachings that Baha'u'llah brought, such as the oneness of humanity, the equality of women and men, these types of spiritual principles really made so much sense for the present age. Whereas, I remember thinking, well, why did the equality of women and men just come now? Were we not equal before? Why is this principle coming at this period? Is it a new thing? And someone explained to me that, humanity is like a child that is growing, and at different time periods, humanity is not ready to hear different principles. For instance, the equality of women and men. As humanity progresses and as we become mature, these types of spiritual principles also reflect the time period. So, for instance, if Krishna was to come and say that the world is one, we didn't even know the world was the way it was, and so that kind of thing didn't make sense. But now that we have discovered certain things, and Baha'u'llah said, we're one human family, that really makes sense, whereas it wouldn't have made sense a long time ago.
So I guess, so you were saying your mother was teaching you very superficially. A lot of it made sense, but I guess you wanted to study more, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely wanted to, it was all well and good and it made sense, but I just really wanted to have a sense of ownership for anything that I did. I really wanted to look into it, not only because, in the beginning it was just because my mom was this religion and I wanted to know, what she got herself into. But when I started attending different activities, I really wanted to learn about it, not only for my mom, but for myself. So I read different books. There was one book especially that really clicked for me. It was called Thief in the Night, which is by William Sears. Great book. And what that was basically about is it was kind of proving that Baha'u'llah is the manifestation of God through this day using prophecies from the Bible.
I see.
Which was great for me to read because I was Christian. And that was a really great book. I also read a lot of other books by William Sears. He was a great children's book writer, so I read God Loves Laughter and those types of books. But I read Thief in the Night with a dictionary, and I also, so I could understand the words that I didn't know.
So how old were you?
I was 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a big thing for me to but I'm the type of person, when I really get into something, I can't let it go until I kind of have peace with it. So as soon as I get involved in something, don't talk to me because I have to finish. So I read Thief in the Night, and I remember looking through a prayer book.
A Baha'i prayer book?
A Baha'i prayer book. And the only one that I could really understand was a prayer from the children's section, which was revealed by Abdul Baha, who was the son of Baha'u'llah.
Okay.
And that prayer goes, "O God, guide me, protect me, illumine the lamp of my heart, and make me a brilliant star. Thou art the mighty and the powerful." And this was the first prayer that I could really understand as a whole. I could understand all the words, which was a big one because a lot of the other prayers had big words in it. But, being 11, I could understand everything, and I could really understand, the essence of that prayer. Guide me and protect me. Those words were just really great. And, make me a brilliant star. It was a beautiful prayer. And I at this point in my journey, I started going to Baha'i Sunday school sometimes, sometimes going to church, sometimes going to Baha'i school. And that was really when this kind of unconscious feeling of something was missing from church really became evident to me, because before, as I said, it was always there, but it wasn't really a conscious thing. And it was not until I started really attending Baha'i activities that I really realized what I was feeling. I could really identify that, yes, I was feeling a little bit of, not loss, not even emptiness, but just something missing. So when I would start attending Sunday school and I would, recite that prayer, it was just such a moving experience for me, because the prayer is just so touching. It just really, I can't even explain it, but it really, at that age, it just was really encompassed everything for me. So now I'm at the point where I'm kind of making the transition between church and going to Baha'i school, and I'm still reading books. I read Thief in the Night, and I also, at church, I would also ask questions in Sunday school. Who's Baha'u'llah? And, no one, my Sunday school teachers didn't know what I was talking about. And so I would ask different questions, and, they were very nice, but very polite in their answers. But, the questions got even more annoying, probably. And at this point, it was probably about the summer. My mom became a Baha'i in February, so we started, going to activities, Nowruz, the New Year in March, and so when the summer hit, I enrolled in a Baha'i camp, which was at a Baha'i school in Maine, and so when I went there, there were counselors, and there were, kids from all over New England, my age, that were coming, and we were learning about different spiritual principles and virtues, and, who is Baha'u'llah and who is Abdul-Baha, and all these different principles. So that was really a turning point for me when I took it from being in my community with my mom to being alone at a Baha'i camp. I mean, that was really something that made an impact on me. So at Greenacre, which is a Baha'i school in Maine, they have a room on the 3rd floor, which is the room which Abdul-Baha stayed in. And Abdul-Baha is the son of Baha'u'llah. Okay. And he came and visited the U.S., and he stayed at Greenacre, this Baha'i school. And there's a room, the room that he stayed in is now turned into a prayer room. And I remember spending a lot of time up there, kind of contemplating and really trying to understand, what part this religion would play in my life. It was my mom's religion, and was it just going to be my mom's religion that I would respect because, I had learned enough about it that I would know, this is for real, it's not some hoax, and, this really makes sense. So was it just for my mom, or, what is it? Would I make it my own? So I was sitting in Abdul-Baha's room for many days. The camp was pretty long. So I was sitting, every day. I remember comments that people would make, that, wow, you're such a good Baha'i. You go, before every meal, I would go to Abdul-Baha's room, after every meal, and then before lunch, after lunch, before dinner, because I really had a lot of reflecting to do. And, now that I look back on it and I see other 11-year-olds, I'm like, wow, to be, when I look at people who are 11 now, I think that they're still so small and still just a child.
It is amazing, Kate. I mean, to be so deep at such a young age.
Well, I get it from my parents. So when I look at other 11-year-olds and I realize, when I was there, what I was going through, I really, although they're young, they have so much potential and can really connect things on such a deep level. I would say a lot of prayers, mostly my own, and I really came to the conclusion at one point during my reflection in Abdul Baha's room that this was really something that I believed in myself.
I see.
This really made a lot of sense to me, and I was at the point where it was either I was going back and I was going to go to church, or I was going back and I was going to be a Baha'i. Because
you were at a crossroads here.
Yeah, I was at a crossroads. And it was something that I really couldn't turn my back on because it made so much sense to me, and all of the teachings and the principles and what the Baha'i faith stood for, but also the history and who Baha'u'llah was. I really, in my heart of hearts, I really believed that he was who he said he was, and it made so much sense why he would be who he was, because those were the two questions for me. Is Baha'u'llah the manifestation of God for this day? And, why is he the manifestation of God for this day? These two questions, I could answer freely, and I wasn't just reciting something that I read from a book. I was really, truly believing it for myself. And so when I came home from Greenacre, I remember, my mom was, "Oh, how was it?" And I remember saying to her, I've decided I really want to give this a shot. I want to become a Baha'i. And my mom was really very surprised because I don't think she really knew what I was doing. She knew I was reading, but I don't really think she knew that I was so deeply invested in it as I had been. At this point, I was 11, and I was very much invested in the Baha'i faith. When I went through my teenage years, my rebellion was to go to different Baha'i activities, to really become so involved in what was going on. When I was younger, I was just really on fire. I'm still young, but when I was, when I was a teenager and through those rebellion years, I really spent so much time in my room reading and staying up late, praying or, gaining so much knowledge about the faith and becoming very involved in the different activities and especially the youth activities, because I really wanted to reach out to people who were of my age that really had the capacity, although we don't think they do, they really have the capacity to, commit themselves and reflect on who they are and what are they doing in this world, which, now I wouldn't have thought that an 11-year-old could really understand the world is big, who we are and what our purpose is in life.
That's a very good point, Kate. I mean, we sort of think that 11-year-olds really don't have the capacity to, to think deeply and to make deep commitments.
Yeah.
We need to open our eyes a little bit more as adults on the capacity of children. Yeah.
Definitely. And so as I became a middle teen and older teen, I became a Sunday school teacher. I really wanted to help different people that were my age. I mean, were younger, but were my age when I became a Baha'i.
I see. So you're talking about middle school age kids.
Yeah, middle school age kids, which is our hardest years, I personally think. Mm-hmm. But so I really became involved in that activity, and I decided in high school that I wanted to not follow the main track of graduating from high school and going on to college. Although I wanted to go to college and I really valued education, I wanted to take some time reflecting. And when I was in high school, I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that I wanted to take time off before high school and college. At this point, I was seeing my brother being in college for 2 years, and then, stopped, just dropped out of college because he didn't really know what he wanted to major in, and he didn't know what he was doing, and he dropped out of college, and he lived at home, and he actually went to Costa Rica for 3 months doing a Habitat for Humanity project, and that kind of reinforced my idea of taking time off and understanding who I was. We often think that college is a self-defining period in our life, and I wanted to kind of really figure out who I was and mold myself before I went to college and, spent thousands upon thousands of dollars, trying to figure out what major I was going to take. So that was what led me to decide to take a year off. And different Baha'i friends that I had went to different countries during their year of service, their year of time between high school and college. A couple of friends I know, they went to China and taught English in China. Another friend of mine went to Panama in South America. And, this all became, I thought, well, wouldn't it be even more amazing, such an amazing experience for me to go to a completely different culture and learn about another culture and have respect for that culture. So I decided I was going to go to another country. At first I thought I wanted to go to China, or South Africa was another idea. And it wasn't really, I don't know how I decided on India, but as soon as I decided on India, it was like no one was going to stop me. I was going to go. I remember watching a couple of Bollywood films, and I didn't, in my school, there were no Indians in my school, so I'm trying to know where India came up. When I went to a youth camp again at Greenacre, there was another youth who was my age who was planning on going on a year of service, and he was thinking about India, and he told me about, he was born in India and he wanted to go back. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, India would be such a great place for me to go. It's so different from America. And the people that I spoke to that had actually gone to India and done service in India really spoke very highly of it. There's a Baha'i house of worship in every continent of the world. There's one in Chicago for for North America. There's one in Panama for South America presently. There's another one under construction in Chile. There's one in Germany for Europe. There's one in Uganda for Africa. There's one in Australia for Australia, and the one for Asia was in India.
Okay.
So the pictures that I saw of the Baha'i House of Worship in India were just breathtaking. It looks like a lotus. And
actually, I when I interviewed Kenneth Wilson,
who's that?
We'll get into that later. We told them that they could probably find a picture of the Baha'i House of Worship in India, which they call the Lotus Temple, I think. If they go to the website www.baha'i.org, there is a link on that website to various countries. And if you click on the link to India, I think on that page there's a picture of the what they call the Lotus Temple.
Yeah. And it was just beautiful. I'd seen pictures of it in the daytime, at night, when it was all illuminated. And it was just such a, breathtaking sight. And people told me that there was about, on average, 20,000 people that would come a day. And, I thought it would just be such a great, different experience for me to go to India. So I decided, and again, once I decide to do something, I'm going to do it. So I decided that I was going to go to India, and my dad especially wasn't too thrilled. A lot of my family members were like, I understand you want to take a year off, you want to do a year of service, but why India? I mean, why do you have to go to a place that has so many people in it, that's so far away? You know, you can do service here. And although I could do service here, I really wanted that world experience. So I went to India.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first 3 months, I served at the Lotus Temple, which was a great introduction to India. You know, I was living in a dormitory with another person, and we shared a bathroom with, you know, the next room. And there was filtered water at our disposal. We had food served to us, you know, 3 times a day. And although it was very difficult in the beginning to adjust to the temperature and the hours that we had to be on our feet and serving, when I first got there, it was during the summer months. And so it was so hot and it was very humid. During the summer months, it opens at 9 and it closes at 7. And during the winter months, it opens at 9:30 and closes at 5:30. So I got there during the summer months. So the volunteers had to, you know, be ready at 8:30. And then, you know, although it closed at 7, there would still be people, you know, until 7:30, 7:45. And what was so great about serving at the temple was we had different posts, you know, we had different things that we had to do. There was entrance, which was welcoming visitors as they came in. There was, you know, the inside post, which was making sure the visitors, you know, stayed quiet and, you know, respectful. And then there was exit, and during the exit post we had different information and, you know, 16 different Indian languages, as well as English and, you know, some other languages as well, that we would give to people who were interested in information. And the thing that was most difficult was not only the heat, but the fact that we didn't have any shoes on. So it's something in India and many Asian cultures, it's a sign of respect to take off your feet before entering. Sorry, take off your shoes before entering a house, but especially a holy place.
I see.
So as visitors entered, there was what's called a shoe room, and different volunteers would ask the visitors to take off their shoes and deposit them into a shoe room. And when they came out, they would get their shoes back with their token. So as volunteers, we also had our shoes off, which was something that was very different. So we were on our feet about 10 hours a day without any shoes on.
Wow.
So that was a little hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it was only a couple of days that I had to do that, but it was the first days. So that was the hard part. And at the temple, there were volunteers from all over the world that were there. I made some amazing connections, and almost every place I can find either a friend that's from there or a friend that knows a friend that's from there or something. There were volunteers from, you know, all over Africa, all over Europe, South America, Australia, and especially all over India. And we came and we were all serving together, and it was a really wonderful experience. And as I said, it was also a great kind of introduction to India, because I was living in India, but I was kind of in this part that was, you know, like an airport, you know, where there's no, that's the international space. So when I was serving there, I would go out to the internet cafes and, you know, go out to different restaurants and stuff. But it was really a safe environment because I was mostly eating food that was kind of catered to my taste buds, or, you know, I knew was cooked well and those types of things. So after the Lotus Temple, after serving at the Baha'i House of Worship in New Delhi, I went to this women's institute in the middle of India. And that was a complete different experience from the Lotus Temple. At this institute, it is a Baha'i-inspired institute, and there's different women from the villages surrounding this kind of city in the middle of India called Indore, and these women come to this vocational institute, and they learn health issues like how to prevent malaria or, birth control things, to learning different skills like boutiquing or tailoring, and so that when they go back to their communities, they can really make a difference. One of the most important things is there's literacy classes. So these women, a lot of them are pretty young, and they're married, and some of them have children, and they're like 18. So, and although they can speak, they don't know how to read and write. So, at this institute, when women come, they take literacy classes, and that's just a wonderful thing. And at this point, I had been living in India for about 3 months, and I knew a little Hindi, enough. So when I went shopping, I could kind of, say what I wanted or what I didn't want. But it wasn't needed at the Lotus Temple. There are other people, from India who were serving there that would talk to different visitors. And again, I was just very interested, especially the prayers. Hindi is a very beautiful language, especially when the prayers are recited, but definitely when they're sung. It's not like English. English doesn't sound good, but Hindi is so beautiful, and different voices coming together and singing this beautiful prayer. I mean, it was just breathtaking. So, especially at the temple, I started learning Hindi prayers. But that was pretty much the extent of my Hindi knowledge. But when I went to this vocational institute for women in the middle of India, if I wanted to talk to someone, it had to be in Hindi, So that was a big step for me, because a lot of people at the temple or in Delhi, people would know English enough that I could communicate. So it wasn't a constant need. But when I went there, it was like everything was a question mark. And I really wanted to make a connection. So I really took it upon myself to learn Hindi. So that's when I really buckled down, and I took the literacy classes. So I could read and write, but I couldn't speak. So that was a little bit of a difficult thing. But although I didn't, because I didn't speak Hindi, I couldn't teach any of the classes. So I was working in the office, and what we were doing there was there was a woman who would translate the materials from Hindi to English, and then I would edit them to kind of make sure the grammar was correct and all that stuff. So that was a really wonderful experience. And at that institute, I was really living in India when I was there. I mean, there was no longer, running water all the time and all, filtered water. It was really, we ate food with the girls, but, for people like me who don't like radish, the night that it was going to be radish, I had to go to the market and get stuff and cook for myself. And, I had my own room, and, there was different kind of technical things that were just really different. The toilet was different, and there wasn't toilet paper, and those types of things that were much different from what I was used to. I had traveled in India before, so I was used to doing different things, but I always came back to the temple, and there was also always like a Western style toilet, as you call it, and toilet paper and stuff like that. So, this was definitely a great experience. I really loved it there, but it was also kind of a difficult one to get through.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So after that, I stayed there a few months, and then I needed to renew my visa because I only had a 6-month India visa. So I went to Nepal, and I renewed my visa there. And that was a great experience because we actually hooked up. I actually hooked up with with a Baha'i who was going to India for his brother's, going to Nepal for his brother's wedding. So it was really great to travel with someone like that. And I guess you call it, we traveled by land. So it was about 500 rupees, which is about $10. But it took a really long time to get there, train here and there and sleeping on the floor and stuff like that. So it was a great experience, but it was an interesting one.
Yeah.
I attended the wedding. I renewed my visa, came back, and then I went to a Baha'i school in Panchgani, which is a hill station, kind of towards. If you look at a map, it looks like it's in the south, but technically it's not part of South India, which is a different kind of entity of India. There's North India, South India, and so
it's different culturally, different geographically, or climate-wise, or
in
what?
India, if you travel 10 miles, you'll find a different dialect. But basically, the main difference is in South India, which consists of, I guess it's like 4 or 5 states. But in South India, there's the local languages, and then there's English. Everyone knows English. But in North India, it's the local language and everyone knows Hindi. So that's, from my understanding, one of the greatest differences from North and South India. And
so you were...
If you look at a map, it looks like I was in South India, but I wasn't really in South India.
Okay. So English was not...
Yeah, English
present.
was... I mean... All throughout India, people spoke English for the most part, but, I guess not as much as...
in South India.
Yes.
Okay.
So, anyway, I went to a Baha'i school, which is actually a high school founded by Baha'is and run by Baha'is. And I didn't really stay there very long because my grandmother came to visit me.
Oh.
So I had actually forgotten that my parents came after I was at the Lotus Temple, but I forgot to say that. My grandmother came to visit me, and I showed her around. We went to the Taj Mahal, that type of stuff. And after that, I went to Chandigarh, which is about 5 hours north of Delhi. It's in the state of Punjab, and it's actually the capital. There, I was basically just doing devotional gatherings, going to different community members' houses and having devotions. I was also, in charge of children's classes, and I would go, again, to different people's homes and conduct children's classes, which was basically, talking about virtues and morals and those types of things. And I was also doing study circles, which are, Baha'is and non-Baha'is coming together and studying specifically with Ruhi books. It's a series of courses to know more about the Baha'i faith. And I was living there with a family, and at that point, I had really I had lived in India a significant time, I would say, in my opinion. And when I was there, there was a lot of things that happened. I got water poisoning, got dehydrated, I got a bladder infection, and this was end of March, April, and almost all of May. And
so how long you had been?
Like about 7 months, 6, 7 months. No, it must have been more than that. 8 months probably. And I was also living with the family, so I, needed to get up in the morning, do my laundry, cook food, all these stuff, which I was very happy to do, And after I was living there, I went back to the temple for the last 3 months that I was there. And that was, when I went back the second time, it was a much different experience. At this point, I lived outside of the temple, so the food was bland. And, the weather, although it was about 120, I was used to it. I mean, it was hot, but I had adjusted to the climate there. So, I could speak Hindi, and, it was just great going back. And I really liked that, going to the temple and then ending at the temple. And I came back at the end of July. So right as the monsoon was hitting, that's when I was going. And so I'd been there about 10 months.
What did you do when you got back from India?
When I got back, I had a huge period of time when I was in culture shock. I didn't really have culture shock when I had gone to India, because it was just a new place for me. Everything was new. It wasn't a shock. But when I came back, I came back to the place that I had been living for so long, and I hadn't remembered it like this. It was such a shocking experience coming back from the airport and driving, in a BMW and driving on the highway where there were hardly any cars, there were no cows, there was no dust, there was no bicyclers and people walking and roadside tea stands, and it was just so different. And going back to Wilbraham and living with my in my parents' house, and this nice suburb town, that had no people, and I was used to having like 50,000 people around me at one time. So it was definitely a shock, and I was kind of, I would say, to the point where I was just really sad to have left such a place full of life. And so when I came back, I was kind of a little down for a while. But I'm glad that I came back at the time that I did, because it gave me almost a month before I went to college, which was a good time. If I had come back sooner, I think I don't know what I would have done with myself. So I went to college. I came back at the end of July, and I went to college, mid to end of August. So that was just a really great time. But I miss India a lot, and I can't wait to go back. We're planning on going back in May.
Are you saying we're? So what's that all about?
Not only did I fall in love with the country, but I also fell in love with the Mr. Kenneth Wilson, who is a native from Chandigarh, which is the capital, as I said, from Punjab. And he was serving with me at the house of worship. We met on the first day that I arrived, and love blossomed. And when I came back, I asked for my parents' consent to get married to Kenneth. In the Baha'i faith, it's a law that you have to ask, or you have to have parental consent from both sides before you get married. So when I came back, I had to ask my parents alone if they would give me consent to get married to Kenneth, whom they had met when they went to India. So it was not a blind, thing. But so we got consent, and it took about 10 months for him to get his visa and for him to get over here. But we were married on June 25th. Of this, I guess last year, 2005. And so the two of us are, have started our life together, and we're planning on eventually going back after I finish my education. I also want to get a master's degree. We're planning on going back and starting a school in India. I really fell in love with the country, and, obviously Kenneth as well. And I just really have a deep respect and a deep love for India. I really want to go back and be of service and really help things. India's a great country, and I especially chose education because I really feel that education is the way that change can happen, and the way to help people rise up. So we're, looking into starting a school for children who are victims of AIDS, meaning their parents or one or two parents or even themselves have AIDS and are left alone. I'm either thinking of a school like that, or a school for, just girls, or a school for, street children that are again, left in the cities, but definitely something where I can be of service. So.
Sounds great.
Yes.
Well, good luck to you in the future.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Katherine Knaplund, a Baha'i currently residing in Amherst, Massachusetts, and is an undergraduate student at the University of Massachusetts. If you want specific information on the Baha'i faith, you're welcome to visit the website www.baha'i.org. That's BAHAI.org. Or you can call the toll-free number 1-800-22-UNITE.